as character builders. Can we give it up for them, please, as they mount the stage? Thank you, and enjoy this session.
You all can sit wherever you want. Thank you.
I'm gonna stay close. I see what's going on there with the dress in the back. Come on now. Come on now.
Yeah, no, I have the button on, but it's.
Hello? Sorry, sound.
This one's working.
Okay, now it's working. Um, Good morning, everyone, and hello, VIPs, young people. How are we doing? Hello, young people. Can all of you like yell at me and say hello? No, I'm not talking about old. I said young people. Anyway, uh, welcome to NYU Labon Dialogues, and today I am very delighted to have with me Nana Akua Bro Hammond, who I've known since 2014, eh? Like I've known you for ages. And you know, she wrote Powdered Necklace, which is young adult, as well as this Blue, which was shortlisted for a really important award recently, wasn't it? Yes, and in addition to that, she also edits. And then she edited the Relations Anthology, which you heard about yesterday. And we have Onjaki, who has written quite a bit children's books. Unfortunately, how many any of your children's books translated into English? Okay, well, not yet. It's a matter of time. But you know, his first novel, personally, I consider it a young adult book as well. You know, Bom Dia Camarada, which is Good Morning Comrades in English. But Onjaki also, in addition to writing, also publishes, owns a bookstore, as some of you might have heard earlier, and works on translations. Like he's just like an institution in his own right. Onjaki, welcome. And we've got Ni Aikwe Parks, who I've known you equally long, eh? All of you three. Anyway, Ni is a poet. He writes children's books. He publishes as well. And you edit, don't you, Ni? Yeah, so he is just a master of all trades, and he sometimes gives us master classes in poetry on Instagram. There you know. So, Ni, welcome. I think I'd like to start with a question to all of you. Like, what does it mean working in this literary landscape for children in particular? How does writing for children differ from writing for adults? You know, which one is more difficult?
I'll just say that for me, it's more delightful. I feel like I get to tap into my own inner child and really connect with the why, the what, the where, the who, the how. You know, I get to connect with that, and I love it for that reason. It feels less pressurized for me.
Which is easier for you?
No, I don't think none of them are easier, but short stories are easier. It's hard for me to publish, to finally decide if the book is ready. The ones for young adults, yeah, it's harder.
Any?
No, I don't think it's easier. I mean, it's important to to take all the work seriously. Of course, I'm maybe more attentive to mistakes in how I portray things, because somebody who's older may have had other experiences, and if something's off, they can say, well, I don't really believe that. For a child, if that's their first encounter with some information and it's wrong, it can become a foundational defect, so to speak. So like one of the things they do with books in Europe, for instance, is they put information at the back for children. And often the author doesn't write that. The publishing house does it. And when Tales from Africa was going to come out, I just asked my agent to ask for the notes for mine, and he got them. And they were terrible. They were notes about Africa, and it was all about animals, pretty much. And yeah, it was all about animals pretty much. And they'd written stuff like Africans need help with conservation and stuff like that, right? And I thought to myself, if a kid reads this is what develops that savior complex that people in the West have. They're going to go and save Africa. It's because of stuff like that. So I have a great agent. He's called David Godwin. And like anything I'm adamant about, he will stand by 100%. So he wrote back to them. He's like, we're pulling the book unless this gets changed. And I had to change the entire thing. And I had to put in terms of conservation, what I put there was, here we go. I basically said that Europeans had gone and hunted and killed all the animals, and so they needed to be aware of that. So it's like, unfortunately, trophy hunting and destruction of habitats by migrant European farmers and tourists have reduced the numbers of species you can see nowadays. That's what ended up in there, right?
That's actually interesting, because I remember when I did both Africa, a True Book, and Black Pimpernel, they actually let me write my own endnotes.
Right.
And that was a lot of fun for me, because, for instance, when I was talking about Ghana having electronic dumping, dumping of electronic waste, to me was like, oh, okay, and I was owning the narrative and stuff. So I really like that you did that. And speaking of, you have KP Kojo as your pen name for one, but you maintain your
Yes.
paper for this. So can you explain that?
Yeah, I mean, so KP, this is a book that was commissioned by Penguin for their classic series, and so ostensibly largely sold in an English language section for European readers when they're over there. And when I was studying, I studied sciences, so I used to read literature all the time, but I couldn't afford to buy the books. I sat in bookstores all the time and read the books over there. And what would happen is sometimes grandparents and uncles would come and buy books by a certain author for a niece or nephew. And if that author wrote for both adults and children, sometimes they'd get the wrong book. And because I was there all the time, I'd be there when they returned the wrong book. So I figured when I was writing for kids, I would use a different name so that mistake wouldn't happen. And it also gave me a chance to pay homage to my father, who was one of the first people who indulged my writing. So KP Kojo stands for Kwame Parks B. Kojo. So in Ghana, that means Kwame Parks' son, Kojo, which is me. So, yeah. But this is in Ghana, so they're not my primary audience. And so it doesn't, like, no one's going to make a mistake and buy a Ghana book when they want to buy a novel.
All right, fair point. And Nana,
Yeah.
you venturing into writing Blue, because Blue is nonfiction, but you had to do a whole lot of research, I imagine. But you did it so beautifully.
Thank you.
On the color Blue, and guys, that's available over at the bookstore as well as Nice Books. This for the youngsters. How was that? How much research did you have to do into that?
I did a lot of research. I read 3 foundational books. There's a book by Catherine McKinley. It's called Indigo, which is a fantastic book. It's a nonfiction book about a woman who did her Fulbright here, an African-American woman who did her Fulbright in Ghana and Nigeria. So she really goes into the indigo trade and how important indigo is to West African economy, West African history. There was another book called The Rarest Blue, which is a sort of global history survey in depth, written by a husband and wife team, Baruch and Judy Sturman. It was also a spiritual book because Baruch and Judy Sturman are coming from a Jewish perspective. And then there was Victoria Finlay's Color, A History of the Natural Palette. And for me, what I started, and then I read tons of research papers, articles, anything that I could find about the history of the color blue. And what I was finding was that with blue, because it touches on the slave trade, it touches so many sort of cultures, it hit me that a lot of the history that we learn as kids and just in general is often told from one specific perspective. Like it's North American history or, yeah, my mic is still working. So you're hearing all this and I thought to myself when I was a kid, coming from Ghana, living in New York, it was always one type of history that I was learning. And so what I loved was being able to collect as much of the global history around this color as possible. So when I go into classrooms, my favorite thing, one child, she was from Bangladesh. Thank you, gentlemen. One of the kids from Bangladesh was like, "You're saying it wrong, it's not Bangladesh," and I'm sorry that I'm massacring it again, but she corrected me and pronounced it, and she was so proud that she had that knowledge in her classroom, which was mostly a white students, and she could say that. And then I asked them, we talk about, because the book touches on the slave trade, I asked them, so what is slavery? And then different kids say different things, and it's kind of funny because you know, it seems like a touchy topic, but kids get it. So I love having these conversations. And then I've had interesting things where I went to one school and one student said, oh, well, blue, I have blue eyes. That means blue is better than, and I was like, no. Exactly. But what I love is the purity because an adult wouldn't ask that question, but they would think it. And so he asked me this question. I answered him the way it needed to be answered, and then we moved on. And there was a young black girl, a black student, one of his classmates, and she wilted when he asked that question about the blue eyes. And when I answered, I saw her rise again, and I was just like, oh, this is why I'm writing this book. So, anyway, I know that was a circuitous answer, but yes.
I'd like to come to you, Onjaki, and I want to talk about Bomdia Camarada, which, as I said, is young adult, and I think particularly relevant since, and you also write you've written a YA book, particularly relevant since the average age on this continent is 19.6, according to stats. And, Bom Dia Camarada, you write this book, Good Morning Comrade. I think it's available on Amazon, actually, guys, for those of you looking for it online. Online. It's written from the perspective of a young child, but it's also, and it's very innocent, but it's also deeply political because this child is seeing Angola through, with the whole narrative of Russians and Cubans in Angola. How was that, writing that? Because that was your first book.
Yeah. It was, actually, it started with a lie. I was having lunch with this publisher from Angola, and he said he was starting this series related with the independence of Angola, and he was getting in touch with writers, but of course, Pepetela, Luandino, they were all born before independence. And he said, would you have any story related to that? And I saw, I don't think I had any book published by then. I had one book written but not published. So I saw the opportunity. He said, this guy has the money, he's looking for the book. So I just told him that I was writing a book exactly about that, independence. And he said, how is that? And I said, it's related, you know, because it's about my childhood and my parents and the Cuban teachers, and then there is the Soviets. And he said, oh, that's nice. So when can you get it? When can I read it? And I said, you know, I've done half of it, maybe in 2-3 months. So I got out of that lunch with the Jacques, a publisher, Angolan publisher, and I went home to write the book. No, but I found out that lie was actually a very good auto process of beginning of Bon Dia Camaradas, because it was not a lie. You know, I was born like one of the first, second generation after the independence. I was born in 77, and the independence is 75. And actually, talking about the Cuban teachers, the
Russian soldiers,
the socialism, what we call the schematic socialism in Angola, that would do, and that made. I'm very happy that I did it that way without thinking too much. If I was to write that book today, I would think more about technique and the effects of this and that. I didn't have time, so I called that my book of luck. I was very lucky the way I wrote it. But as I told you before, my family is so crazy, and we have not only my family, any family in Angola that was involved in the independence process. So yeah, that ended up to be, and I had to choose who's telling the story, and because of time, I thought it was easier to put in these kids' mouth. And I remember some stories, and when I started writing, I called my parents, my sister, and said, do you remember things from that time? And they told me stories about me, things that I had done or told that I didn't remember. But not only me, all the kids in the street. So that's what I did. I used those stories.
I remember you did have a very funny story about going into South Africa with swimming.
With what?
With a swimming pool.
Oh, yes. That's another one. No, it's not what you're thinking.
It's a book that's coming. Anyway,
Sorry, Zooks, just saying something. I think it's very important about what you said about the touchy things that people would suppose you shouldn't or you wouldn't write for or with children. And that's something that keeps me very, death, sexuality, gender, love, those complicated things that we think it's complicated. It's not that complicated for them. It's just a proposal. It's just a proposal of a debate. I think books should do that. So that parents, teachers, they have to deal with that, with our provocation as writers, and then talk with the kids about that. Just listen to them.
Language. How do you deal with language? Because I generally find when I'm writing for children, I always have to find like a young person to read so that they make sure that I get it correctly, because I'm like, yeah, if this is like supposed to be for 8 to 10-year-olds and an 8 to 10-year-old can't pronounce it, maybe I should remove the word. How do you guys deal with language for children as opposed to when you write for adults?
I mean, I don't really worry about it too much, because the thing you realize when you talk to children is their vocabulary is so random. Like you meet a 3-year-old with some big words, you meet a 15-year-old with like more limited vocabulary than a 3-year-old. Publishers find it useful because they have to do these age bands to sell to institutions and stuff like that. But the actual reading experience of children very often doesn't really correlate to that. And that's, so I think about the spirit of the story. And you also have to remember that words have not just meaning, but also percussion. So there are some big words that you think is too much for a child, but actually they enjoy the experience of learning to say that word. If you say discombobulation, like a child will struggle over it, but they'll be like, oh my God, discombobulation. And then they'll be using it for like 3 weeks, and then it will no longer be the word of the day. So I actually like to have a few big words in a book, because it also becomes a point of discussion for children with their parents, because you have to remember that the reading experience is also supposed to be shared. And so even if their parents are not literate, they will find somebody else who's literate. It might come into discussions. All of that's part of the reading experience. It's not just us and the book. And so I don't worry too much, but I do, the spirit of it, the music of it, of the story is way more important for me. Like having fun while I'm writing it, so I know they'll have fun while they're reading it.
Yeah, I similarly, so this children's book this is my first children's book, so I wasn't really thinking about that because I didn't know. But when I thought it would be for an older child, because it is sort of a heady, nerdy book about the history of the color blue. But when the publisher came back to me and said they were designating it for 4 to 8-year-olds, I was like, 4? Oh my goodness. But when I went into classrooms and started sharing the book, that's when I realized, I said, okay. Because so I've done classroom visits with everyone from kindergarten through to 5th grade and older, 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade, and adult sessions as well. And the very young kids they're just like, after they consume the book, they're like, that's blue, that's blue, that's blue, that's blue. Then you get the 7, 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, they are very concerned with justice. So they will tell me, do you mean to tell me that people were brutalized just to get the color blue? And that opens up a discussion of, okay, what do you see that is beautiful? What do you want? What do you crave? And what are you willing to do to get it? Who are you willing to make someone else suffer so you can have what you want? And that's a beautiful discussion with them at that age. Then you get the 11, 12, 13-year-old, and they just want to know, how much money did you make? You said you got an advance? How many copies of this book have you sold? Where'd you get those shoes? Where's that outfit from? But that's also their way of processing, this as a career. Because then they want to know, like, okay, you wrote this book. What did it take? And then we started talking about literary agents, and we started talking about publishers and how to get published. So it's very, very interesting. Then I've had sessions with just adults, and it's turned into I had one heavy session where all of us adults were crying because one woman was talking about the fact that she is mixed race, her father's eyes were blue, she has inherited her father's blue eyes, so she is grateful because now he's passed on, and these blue eyes connect her to her dad, but she also feels conflicted because in some ways it has separated her from her family and her culture. And I was just like, whoa! But that's the beauty of this sort of space, because I think that whether you're an adult or a child, we're all given permission in this genre to kind of go back to that space of childhood, of asking those questions, those elemental, fundamental questions. So,
Fantastic. Onjaki, what do you do with Language for Kids? Do you just write and you hope they'll discover new words, or?
Yeah, I don't do that much of trying out. Sometimes with my nephews and nieces, but they are not trustworthy. Is that how you say it? Because they mix things. I start showing
pretty
them a
high
story.
reading age, though.
No, and then they start telling about other things and mixing up. I said, no, I'm just asking about this story. No, but you said you were going. Like, I have this niece, Kyla. She used to have. She was not anymore. She was afraid of doors. Then I was searching for Kyla. Are you really afraid of doors? Well, she was afraid of being locked in some place, like a small. Then I traveled. I went back, and she said, "You know what? I have no more fear of doors. Do you want to see?" And she locked herself in a tiny space in the kitchen. I said, "It's okay. No, wait." She went inside, and she stayed there for a while. Then she came and said, "See, I'm not afraid anymore." And I said, "We should do a story about this." And what did I say? What did I say? It's up to today. Where's my book? Where's my book? Where's my book about the doors and the doors? And I said, you know what? I sometimes I use other people's ideas, but it's not. Is that triggering me? Is that the trigger issue today? It's not triggering me. So you should write the story. I can help you. Oh, you will help me? You will write with me? No, you will write. I will just let you know. So she did. She kind of writes sort of a. But now we have to publish it, you know. And it's,
well, thank God you've got Kasimbo then.
Sorry?
Thank God you've got Kasimbo to do that.
Yeah, you know, but it's not for that, the publishing house. It's not for my niece, it's for everyone. No, but other than that, I think it's very beautiful how they react differently. And it's not only, that's what I'm always saying, it's not a group of age.
Yeah.
It's not. I mean, like, sometimes it's a 6 years old, sometimes it's a 9 years old. I think they're different. I think we have to respect that. Especially, do not be condescendent with them. You know, just ask them, try. Also, write to yourself. There was this lady who told me, write to the children inside of you. I said, no, I will write for the adult inside of me because the adult inside of me likes this guy. I was looking at this book and I was crazy about it. It's very, very beautiful and it's amazing. You see, I'm here, but I'm being attracted to it. So I think we should respect that. And it's losing that border, you know. Those books are not for children. Those books are for everyone because you like them. I like them. Not only the children like them. So we think, oh, this is a book for children. I think children will like it, but this is a book for everyone, especially for everyone.
Fantastic. Nee, maybe you could read us something. I see our time is almost running out, so maybe you could read us something, and maybe you could read us something as well, Nana.
Okay.
For the children in us.
Yes. So I'm gonna have to read like just a little bit from a story called The Jackal and the Lion, because they used to be homeboys. They used to hang out all the time. But if you've ever been in the wild, you see that lions and jackals don't hang out anymore. And the reason is because jackal used to do all the work and lion used to take all the food. So at this point in the story, jackal's been thrown out of his community because he kept bringing like really bad food home. And they're like, you're really cool with lion and you keep letting him take the good food. And so the jackal had no community. And lion's like, come to my house and eat with me. And so this is lion's wife serving some nice zebra to the kids. If you like zebras, you know, they reproduce. Don't worry, they're still out there. Yeah, okay. When Lion's wife served the zebra, she placed large chunks of flesh in front of Lion and all 6 of his cubs. Jackal's mouth watered as she came to him. His portion seemed as big as Lion's, and Jackal shuffled to make space for it in front of him as she set it down. He closed his eyes in anticipation of the feast of flesh and fat, but when he opened them, he saw she had put 3 huge knots of entrails in front of them. Do we know what entrails are? Yeah? It's all that stomach stuff.
Yeah. Sorry, one moment. If any of you young people want to come and sit here so you can hear the story properly, please do. Any of the kids, come? You can come. Don't be shy. You can come and sit with us.
But don't let your parents push you, though. Where are we? So, huge knots of entrails in front of him. Jackal glared at Lion, who was already licking his lips after his first morsel. I thought you said I would eat like a lion. Lion growled, don't interrupt me when I'm eating. You are sitting with lions, aren't you? But, roared Lion, don't try my patience. I've told you before, flesh and fat are not good for jackals. Entrails are what you like, and they are good for you. Jackal shut his mouth. He realized his mother had been right all along. Lion would never be good at sharing. First he, Jackal, found the prey. Then Lion jumped off his back to make the kill. And it was he who had even carried the zebra home for Lion today. But still his friend would not share. Now Lion was telling him what jackals like to eat. How cheeky. Does a lion know what a jackal's stomach feels like? Has a lion ever spent a day in a jackal's skin? So I'm going to jump to how Jackal paid Lion back. Here we go. So basically, he gets the next kill. He doesn't take it to Lion's place. He takes it up to the hill to the jackals. And then Lion comes and he wants to eat. And he's trying to convince them to send some of the food down. And Jackal is pretending he's angry with his people and he's beating a sack and they're screaming. They're like, he's beating us. He's going to bring it down to you. And so Lion's down there and he's going to throw some stuff down there. So, say, old friend, this is Lion speaking, that quagga flesh smells wonderful. It is lion, and I'm surprised that we jackals have preferred entrails for so long. Lion laughed. You are teasing me. I explained to you, it's for the jobs we do. For example, I do not have flesh and fat. And if I do not have flesh and fat, I may not be as strong when we hunt tomorrow. Then we will both starve. Oh, lion. Jackals never starve. We've been around for thousands of years. But I understand that you need some fat and flesh tonight. Why don't I throw some down to you? You would do that for me, Jackal? Of course, old friend, of course. Why don't you open your mouth and let us throw the pieces in? Lion settled on his hindquarters, lifted his magnificent head to the sky, and opened his jaws to their fullest width. Up on the mountain, Jackal and his family collected rocks, wrapped them in quagga skin, and rubbed them with leftover fat. When they had 9 pieces, they stacked them at the edge of the mountain. Are you ready, Lion? Jackal shouted. Yes, roared Lion. Can't you see? Okay, I have 10 pieces for you. Here comes the first. Jackal threw the first rock directly into Lion's throat, near the back of the tongue where Lion could taste the sweet fat first. Lion didn't even try to chew. He just swallowed the rock, delighted to feel its weight settle in his body. Do you want the next one? Shouted Jackal cheerily. Yes, growled Lion. Make it quick. Jackal threw the second rock down, then the third. Lion paused to lick his lips. This quagga is quite heavy, Jackal, he said. Yes, Lion. This quagga is very special. I have 7 pieces left. Should I pack them for you to take to your wife and 6 cubs? Jackal asked to see if Lion would want to share with his own family. No, I'm not full yet. Throw down the next piece. Lion opened his jaws again. Jackal tossed the next piece, then another, then another. After the 6th piece, Lion couldn't stomach anymore. He felt the weight of his belly becoming hard for him to support. Still, he wanted to finish the meat, so he asked Jackal to wait for a moment so he could settle his stomach. Lion would have stayed at the foot of the mountain all night if that's what it took, but Jackal did not want his old friend to be so close when he realized that he had been tricked. He would be able to call the attention of other lions to Jackal's hiding place. Lion, Jackal said, why don't you go home and sleep it off? I will keep the rest for you to come and finish tomorrow. Lion lifted his head. That's a great idea, my friend. I'll see you tomorrow for the hunt. Well, I can tell you that Lion didn't turn up for the hunt the next day. See, while Lion has very wide jaws, its bum is no bigger than a goat's. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Nee.
Okay, I'm going to read some parts of Blue. All right. So the color blue is all around us. Have you ever wondered where it comes from? It's in the sky, but you can't touch it. Can you? Can you pull the blue out of the sky? You can pull it, you just did. It's in the sea, but when you cup it, what happens? What color is the water when you put your hands together in the ocean? Is it still blue? No. It disappears. The blue disappears. You can crush iris petals for a brilliant shade, but just add water and away it fades. But then blue appears in the strangest places, discovered throughout history in the most unexpected ways. As early as 4500 BC, diggers found blue rocks called lapis lazuli in mines deep below Afghanistan's Sarai Sung Valley. Ancient Egyptians mostly used the rocks to make jewelry. Some wore them as charms, believing they had the power to protect people from evil. But with time, they found new ways to use this underground find. By 44 BC, many Egyptians, including Queen Cleopatra VII, were applying a bluish mixture around their eyes that looked like eyeshadow, made with ground lapis lazuli grains, plants, and animal fat. More than 600 years later, artists began painting sculptures, walls, and canvases with blue from the crushed rocks too. It was a royal pain for those who made the paint, and so expensive only the wealthy could buy it. Since it was a luxury and in such high demand, for centuries, scientists, merchants, and dyers looked for more sources of blue. Then, On the shores of the Mediterranean, Central America, Mexico, and Japan, dyers found blue in the belly of certain shellfish. A Phoenician myth says a dog discovered the color. Finding a snail on the beach, the pup ate it up. And from that moment, a new industry was born. Dyers had different ways of releasing the color. In Mexico, they pressed the snail's foot. In the Middle East, they cracked its shell. Then they waited for the blue to appear. Depending on the snail, the color starts out a milky white or brownish yellow. But once it's in the air and the sun, it quickly turns green, then reddish purple, and with more sunlight, blue. But whether dyers pressed or cracked, snail blue was hard to produce. Each snail released just 1, maybe 2 drops. So imagine how many snails and drops it took to dye a royal robe, not to mention enough fabric to fill a merchant's shop. So perhaps because blue was the color of the heavens, yet so rare and hard to create on earth, people around the world considered the color holy. In an old Liberian folktale, blue is explained as a gift that connects God to humans. In Italy, from the 13th century onward, some artists began reserving blue to paint the robes of Mary, the mother of Jesus. In Indonesia, some say special prayers to ward off evil spirits before they make the dye. In Israel, blue drapes hung in the temple King Solomon built, and many Jews still wear blue dyed threads called kalit. For years, snail blue was the most popular color, but all along there was another way to find blue in nature. In parts of Asia, Africa, the Caribbean, and the Americas, a group of plants in the pea family grew. They were called indigo fera. There were a few different ways to get indigo from these blue plants' green leaves. Indian dyers soaked them in water, while West African dyers crushed and dried them.
Thank you, Nana. I still want them to buy the book.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And finally, we've got Onjaki. Onjaki, this is online, right? The Flight of the Dolphin is going to read. Can we get it on Amazon? The Flight of the Dolphin.
This is not published. I just.
Oh, wow,
this
look
is-
at you.
This is a translation that Danuta made. Danuta is the
That's coming
illustrator.
out.
Yeah.
All right, fantastic.
It's not
So-
coming out unless somebody publish it. No, it's not coming out. It's ready, but it's not out yet.
Okay,
I'm
let's
just
talk.
reading out tiny
Let's
part
talk
of it.
after this.
Yeah. I'm called Dolphin, but I'm also called Bird. I have a short story to tell you. Take a seat. I will start. I was raised in the sea playing with other dolphins. I like to swim, to smile. I even like to fly. My friends used to say that I had a different beak. What would a different beak be? You don't have a dolphin's beak, you have a bird's beak. I used to swim at high speed and I love to jump. See, asked me another dolphin, you already jump like a bird. One day, the sea was very still. I took a huge jump, and at the time, I saw my body mirrored on the water. My beak looked like a bird's beak, my body, a bird's body, my look, a bird's look. I jumped again and I felt very happy. That happiness was something beautiful that my heart felt. It was beautiful because it made me fly. I had a different body. And then he starts flying.
Thank you very much, Onjaki. What is, yeah. Firstly, what are your names?
He
sir?
said something very good. Bye. Get your name.
What's your name?
My name is Nakoa. Nakoa.
And what's your name?
Yannick.
Danny. All right, and what question do you have?
He said he flew for what? 1 second?
Yes.
He said he flew for, the dolphin flew for 1 second. Is that it?
Yes.
You think he can fly more?
No.
He doesn't think he can fly more. You got to read the book. Something very amazing happened.
Maybe he thinks that the water is the sky.
Ah.
That's sweet. Beautiful.
You got to read it because it's something like that.
The philosopher.
He just wrote another book.
Fantastic. The books, folks, are available for you, your nephews, your nieces, the young adults in you. Blue, Onjaki is going to be talking about publication.
Yes.
But maybe before we finish, I wanted to talk about your space because I've been lucky enough to experience it. In Luanda, you've got a bookshop, Kiela, and you've got an area for young children. Tell us a little bit more about that and what the rest of us can probably learn from that, because I think spaces like that are knowledge exchange.
As I told you before, it's an open space. So you saw it. It's like in a house. We share the space with a cinema production company. And the thing is that we learn a lot with the kids there. For example, the kind of activities we do, not only the books, just don't call them to come here and read the books. No. You go there, it's a space, you can play. You can only go there and play. And sometimes, usually at Saturdays, we have theater. We have
They make cars.
yeah, and we have that painting.
And dolls and stuff.
What's that, like a workshop? So we have this, we support the artists whatever they do, and there is this artist who does the candongueiros. The candongueiros are those taxi, we call them taxis in Portuguese, they're not taxi. The collective, yeah,
Tra-tra.
yeah, here, no, it's candongueiro there. So he painted like a professional one with with everything. So I asked him not to paint, just build them. He does that with recycling materials. He just leaves it white. And then the kids come, they have to paint it, they have to tell a story about it, and because the parents pay for them to be there, they get to take the car, paint it, one book, and have 1 hour, to those stories. And sometimes we also do monthly exhibitions, so they can leave the car there for the other kids to see for 1 month, and they can then pick up their car, obviously, and take home. So it's gathering. It's a place where they like to be, and that's what we want. Not only just come here and read. No, like a
They create
bookstore.
new worlds,
Yeah.
basically.
And a bookstore can
Yeah,
be
yeah.
a place where you can also just go and play, enjoy. You don't have necessarily to read. They end up seeing the books and reading, or they end up listening to a story.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm hearing that our time is up, so I think you might have to ask any question.
In your writing, how do you think you're different to other writers?
You, how are you different?
Can I ask her the same question?
All of you?
No, please.
Okay, sorry guys.
Well-
In your writing?
we need to do
Yeah.
this because this is important.
Well, I mean, I think the way everybody sees the world comes from how they've grown up. Even if you grew up in the same house as your brother, you don't remember everything the same way. You remember things slightly differently, so it means you will tell stories slightly differently. And that's how we're all different. So, for instance, for Tales from Africa, I actually asked all friends from across Africa stories they remembered being told as children. And you tell me in a few short sentences, but I had to extend them and make them my own, and I added lots of things to it. And I gave them the stories back to read, and they're like, this is completely different from how I remember it, but it's also the same. And I think that's what it is. You can only tell a story with the vocabulary you have, the language you have. When you change a language, a story changes slightly. If I tell a story in Ga, it's not going to be the same as if I tell it in English, because Ga's philosophy is different from English philosophy. So all of that stuff is what makes us different storytellers. Why we also need different readers.
I was just going to quickly say that something that I ask you is, what's your favorite color? And if you had to go and tell the story of your favorite color, what would you pick out? What would be most interesting to you? And
Okay, tell us, what do you like about green?
It's all over the world. It's
Green. Tell them the color. Tell them the color.
because I
He
like
said green.
green because it's, for me, I always think about nature, the grass, the trees, so many things. I mean, wherever you look around, for me, I only see green.
Thank you very much.
So my favorite color is blue because I like the ocean. I also like the sky, and like it's also, if you go in the ocean, it's like you have very much fun for me.
Mm.
Enjoy it.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
So close to nature.
And please thank my special guests on stage and then these others. The books, you can find them at the bookstore. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and thank you, guys.
Thank you, Zooks.
Hi. Hello. There's books to our left for purchasing and signing. See you soon.
Down at the market, you hear ladies cry, while on the aisles they beg. I must be glad that my heart is here, though I have been from Mexico. But I'm sad to say I'm on my way. Won't be back for many a day. My heart is down, my head is turning around. I had to leave a little girl in Kingston town. But I'm sad to say I'm on my way. Won't be back for many a day. My heart is down, my head is turning around. I had to leave a little girl in Kingston town. This is my island in the sun, where my people have toiled since time begun. I may sail away on many a sea, the shores forever will be home to me. So I sing, oh island in the sun, willed to me by my father's hand. All my days I was singing blues of the forest, Wallace, my shining sun. Oh, island in the sun, will to me of the forest waters, the shining sun. I see a woman on bended knees, cat and cane for a family. I see a man at the riverside, he was casting nets at the surging tide. And I say, oh, island in the sun, willed to me by my father's hand. All my days I will sing and praise of the waters, waters, the shining sun. I said, oh, island in the sun, willed to me by my father's hand. All my days I will sing and praise of the forest, waters, the shining sun. Deo, Missy Deo, the lights come, let me one go. Deo, Missy Deo, Missy Deo, Missy Deo, the lights come, let me one go. Come, Mr. Tallyman, tally me banana. The lights come, let me one go. I said, come, Mr. Tallyman, tally me banana. The lights come, let me one go. Lift 6 foot, 7 foot, 8 foot, march. The lights come, let me one go. I said, lift 6 foot, 7 foot, 8 foot, we march. The lights come, let me one go. Deo, me see day, me see day, me see. The lights come, let me one go. Deo, Deo, oh, the lights come, let me one go. Come, Mr. Tallyman, tally me banana. The lights come, let me one go. Sing, come, Mr. Tallyman, tally me banana. The lights come, let me one go. 6 foot, 7 foot, 8 foot, march. The lights come, let me one go. I said, lift 6 foot, 7 foot, 8 foot, march. The lights come, let me one go. 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 Here you. The lights come, let me one go. Oh, oh, oh. say, would you keep it so high? Miami, dead all day. If I send you what you are, baby, I dino. Oh, don't my minty one day. And no, never me, I was separate. To me, an answer, Sam. 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 Where, oh, where, an answer, Sam. Where, oh, where, an answer, Sam.
Abra bro,
Yeah,
baby bo,
yeah,
odo ye wo when you was to tie me. Eh abra bro,
yeah,
baby bo,
yeah.
odo ye wo when you was to tie. And yes, Jenny, I'm one for phobia or bird grow. To get na hasa wo beshana brabo mu kena vise wo hia sesa asa twempena apa wo do bia fani dodom na wo keka se wo ho ne so far baida ye juma o sika ni subaika nanti otutu se wo ma asa tata elia celebrity oti ni hujaja kromo foma wo fani so a so ne ho ba se obiara meboa ne dofo ba kupo nya no amaja poma ama mehu se wo bi do wa ne wo sika inti yami udona sebe sania sese uje wosu mame kania se ye drumpe mu na wo bombe brania feme zafinat ododi mu pania wadias
Between what say after one say me, what can you descend it drum say oh da. Between what say after one say me, the more gonna inside the drum say oh da. Ain't he cause so I did damn it. Shaving your pay, not touch him and say me. To me an answer, Sam. To me an answer, Sam. Order to me an answer, Sam. 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 Order to me an answer, Sam. To me an answer, Sam. Where, oh. System. Where, oh, where, an ancestor.
need a short out redemption. Don't wanna end up a cartoon in the grave. Bone digger, bone digger. If you be my bodyguard, I could be a long lost bound. I can call you Betty, Betty. When you call me, you can call me out. If you be my bodyguard, I could be your long lost bound. I can call you Betty, baby. When you call me, you can call me out.
Hello, everyone. Shall we resume our seats, please? The second session is about to begin. Thank you to the Legon Palm Wine Band, for blessing our ears with all those sweet melodies. Okay. Our second session, Africa to the World, the business, will be discussed by Amina Safona, Jennifer Makumbi, and Abubakar Adam, moderated by Michael Kelleher. Can we give them a round of applause, please?
Mic's on? Okay. Hi, everybody. Hi, panelists. Pick up your microphones, please, so they can hear you. So I'm Mike Kelleher. I'm the director of the Wyndham Campbell Prizes at Yale University. And we're going to talk about a very narrow band of the business of literature today, which is literary prizes. With me today, we've got three decorated writers. Starting over here, we have Abubakar Adam Ibrahim, winner of the Nigeria Prize for Literature in 2016 for his amazing novel, Season of Crimson Blossoms. Abubakar, sorry. Jennifer Nansabuga Makumbi from Uganda, who won the Wyndham Campbell Prize in 2018, probably best known for her novel Chintu. Aminata Forna, who also received the Wyndham Campbell Prize in 2014, and too many novels to name, but her most recent book is a book of essays from the window seat, yes, which is a great book of essays about Aminata, who really had a kind of remarkable growing up. So please welcome Aminata. So one of the things I was thinking about, my friend James Marua is sitting here in the front row, and when I started working on the Wyndham Campbell Prizes 10 years ago, we were completely unknown in the world, and we were trying to get the word out globally about who we are and what we were doing. And I noticed that there was this blog called jamesmarua.com that was paying really close attention to the Wyndham Campbell Prizes. And in those first couple of years, I think 6 out of the first 9 fiction recipients for the prize were from African countries, several from Nigeria, South Africa, Sierra Leone. And I got this really interesting, I remember James's response the following year when there was no African representation in the Wyndham Campbell Prizes, and he was like, I'm just so disappointed that there were no Africans this year. And But it gave me this sense of like somebody actually paying attention and caring about the prizes. And I think I've always felt that from the African literary community, that there's this real sense of ownership, there's this real sense of engagement, and there's this real sense of pride in the writers who receive our prize and who and receive the many different prizes that are either Africa-based or are international. And I wonder, Abubakar, could you talk a little bit about like the way that prizes function in on the continent and the way they're perceived by writers and audiences?
Thank you. That's a difficult question to answer because the space is kind of small, but it's complicated. Complicated because there are different prizes that are trying to do different things. I know the Kane Prize used to be like really, really big, 2000s, very early 2000s, in kind of producing the kind of authors that people kind of look to for their work, people who get shortlisted. I think, by and large, my first book in 2012, a collection of short stories, became popular in Nigeria when it was published, but it became even more popular across the continent when it was shortlisted for the Kane Prize. Right, so it kind of gives that projection profile. But at the same time, it kind of created this conversation where people felt like there was a particular kind of narrative that was winning the prize, which is poverty porn, right? Stories that focused on refugee children, crisis, war, things like that. Not the best depiction of Africa as a continent, and it was kind of projecting this single narrative that most people did not approve of, right? And the argument was that, well, this prize is being awarded by people in London, right? And that is probably the kind of narrative that they want to see. I'm not sure that is entirely correct, but when you have a track record of producing the same kind of stories, winning the same prize, it kind of lends credence to that argument. So there was this push to get prizes on the continent going. Right, and that is where the Etisalat Prize for Fiction came up, the Kwani Prize for Manuscript as well, which Jennifer was the first winner of. There was the Writivism Prize for African Writing. I happened to be on the board of that. I judged the prize once. But the irony is that all those prizes I mentioned just now, Etisalat, Kwani, Writivism, they've all gone under, right? Because they relied on finding funding from elsewhere. And now those funding have dried up, and they're gone. So it's a major thing. Now you have probably the biggest prize, the LNG prize, which is backed by the Nigeria Liquefied Natural Gas Company. And they've been consistent for the last maybe 20 years or thereabout, since 2007, right? So that has been consistently going. Which other one? Yeah. I think basically, well, the South African prizes as well. Those ones are going strong. So they are important. They kind of give people traction. They kind of put books in the focus of people and audiences. So, yeah.
I mean, I think that's a really interesting question just from a literary perspective about, you were talking about the desire, the poverty porn type of novel as a certain narrative that people are writing toward. But I know both of you guys have talked quite a bit about that and writing narratives that are unexpected. Aminata, your book, The Hired Man, is about white people in Croatia. And you talked a little bit yesterday about, what it meant to write that and how that was received. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that. Like, what is it that, how are you resisting those types of narratives about Africa in your writing?
I don't feel obliged to write about anything in particular. I write about what I want to write about and whatever compels me. But I think it's interesting when we, think about when somebody steps outside the narrative that is expected of them from the perspective of prizes, because we're going to talk quite a lot today about winning prizes or being nominated for prizes. But I've also judged a great many prizes. Yeah. And it's the booby prize. If you don't win, they ask you to judge the next year. So I've sat on a lot of panels, judging panels, and very often, typically, most of the people who judge are not writers. Right? Publishers are not allowed to judge for obvious reasons, and nor are agents and editors. And there's a great big, and there has been for many years, a sort of push to have high-profile judges, celebrity judges, and this is all about trying to attract money to the prize and publicity to the prize. So when I'm asked to judge a prize, it's usually because I'm supposed to be the literary voice on the panel. Now, when the books come out, you can absolutely see what the other judges are going to go for. They're going to go for whatever the issue of the moment is, right? Whatever it is, whether it is poverty, whether it is gender, whether it is, I don't know, domestic abuse, feminism, trauma, they're going to go straight for that issue, and whichever book represents that issue. So, you know, it was kind of interesting with The Hired Man. I regard it as one of my best written books. I know that my American publisher has said to me, it is your best written book, right? Didn't make a showing on the prize shortlists. And yet, all my other books have made showings. I think there was one.
There was a book that we read in 2014 for the Wyndham Campbell Prize.
Oh, you read The Hired Man? Well, good-o. Thank you. Actually, no, it did get longlisted for the IMPAC Award. But, you know, all my other books had always got showing somewhere. And then this one kind of didn't. And I mean, this sounds a little bit, I don't want it to sound the way it might sound. You know, why didn't I get an award? But there was just a sort of interesting difference in the way that it was received. And since I have written books subsequently that have African characters in them, it's almost as though people are saying, oh yeah, well that was an anomaly and now she's back to what she should be writing, right?
And Jennifer, you know, you've talked about that, like resisting certain narratives, you know, maybe from a different perspective. You know, with Chintu, I remember you talking very eloquently about the reason you excluded the colonial period in Uganda, you know, as a way of writing a book where any white reader was going to have to identify with the African characters rather than to, you know, find somebody literally like themselves in the book. And I wonder if you could talk about that type of approach to narratives.
First of all, you've got to realize that when I started writing, I wasn't aware of awards. And for anybody who's beginning to write now, that sounds like a lie. But I was not aware of the awards apart from the Nobel Prize. Because back then, there were no prizes on the continent. And the Kane Prize hadn't started. So for me, I was just writing. You know, when I found out that you could win an award, I thought, hallelujah, wonderful. But, and I think most writers do not write to prizes, okay? Prizes are like somebody saying, standing on the roadside while you walk past, doing your thing and saying, wonderful, can I give you a bottle of water, da, 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 da. It helps you along, but it's not what writers write to. So for me to exclude Europe out of my novel was because I had arrived in Europe and I had seen what they were doing with Things Fall Apart. Because in Britain, whenever they wanted to teach an African novel, straight to Things Fall Apart. And also, I had been teaching literature in English in Uganda. So I had taught Things Fall Apart, and I had studied it for so long. So I was surprised when in Europe they were focused on how terrible the British were. Can you imagine this fantastic, wonderful culture that we destroyed? And I kept on thinking, hang on a minute, the British do not arrive in that novel, perhaps to a quarter of the novel. In the beginning, you just see Okonkwo, the husband, Okonkwo, the man, Okonkwo, the dad. They ignored all of that, and they zoomed into themselves. And I thought, hang on a minute, I'm writing about my culture, But you are going to paraphrase my culture and look for yourselves in my book. I don't care how much you hate yourselves, but I want the world to see that we Ugandans are beautiful, but we are also ugly. We're wonderful, but we're, oh my God. You know, this is what Achebe was looking for. The West went to find itself. So I thought, okay, I'm going to cut it out. And then I was invited to Oxford University to talk about my book. And the clever students turned around and said, oh, the more you did not write about it, the more it screamed on the page.
You really can't win, huh?
You just can't win.
I think it's interesting to think a little bit about the different kinds of prizes that populate the world, because they do really have different functions. You know, the Wyndham Campbell prizes are, you know, we call ourselves, you know, the Writer's Prize, right? Because we don't give the prize, even though we might only read one book by a writer in the selection process, we're also looking at their whole careers. And what we're trying to reward is talent that we feel we want to invest in, and we want to find writers who have careers that we think are exciting. And then the gift from Donald Wyndham and Sandy Campbell was basically just like, give a writer time to write. Give them enough money so that they can live for a year or 2 or 5, depending on how long they can make the money last. But I think that's different than other prizes, right? And I'm not saying that in any kind of a value judgment, but I think different prizes serve different purposes. Like, so for instance, the Booker Prize, right? Like, the Booker Prize is a publishing prize, and it's designed to create markets for literary fiction. And it does an excellent job of that. And you know, the people who win that prize, they sell a lot of books. All the people who are shortlisted, all the people who are longlisted, they see a boost in the sales of their books. And it's really one of the only prizes that is capable of moving books that way. And it's a really interesting approach. They have a budget that's about the same as mine, and we give out $1.45 million in prizes every year. The Booker Prize gives out $80,000. And all of that goes into the marketing of those books, and it's really successful. Then you have a prize like the Kane Prize, which, you know, it's not a huge purse, $10,000, nothing to sneeze at. But it's also got this, it always had this element of like the writers' workshops too. And so there was this idea of identify and develop, right, a writer, you know, writer's talent. And I think that was like a really unique and successful part of what the Kane Prize was trying to do. I mean, it really brought to attention a lot of really significant writers, but not just by saying like, hey, check this writer out. It was like, hey, check this writer out, and then we're going to bring down, and we're going to like hang out, and we're going to work on their writing, and we really want to make them a successful writer. And that's another kind of approach. Then you have something like the Nigeria Prize, which is, to some extent about like national pride and about, you know, coalescing around, you know, what we think is the best of our particular culture, and then also recognizing that with a huge amount of money. So there isn't really like one meaning of the word prize. And I wonder what, you know, you guys' experience of prizes was like, first as somebody who hadn't won a prize yet, and then, you know, somebody who did win a prize, and what it was like after you won the prize, and what impact you feel like you had it on your career and your life. So maybe we want to start with you, Abu Bakar.
I guess it brings pressure, but it depends on how you relate to pressure, right? Because personally, when I started writing, I made up my mind that the best prize I want to win is the reader's heart. Right? If my readers love my work, it doesn't matter if I win a prize or not. And with my first book, I felt that way, that people loved it. It was unexpected because it's a short story collection, right? And then you had all this critical acclaim for the book, and I was content with that. And then the Kane Prize shortlist came out, and that was sort of like, sort of like an endorsement, right? But the biggest endorsement was people loving the book, right? And with Season of Crimson Blossoms, when it won the Nigerian Prize for Literature, lots of conversation about that. I mean, it's $100,000. That's a lot of money. And that happened particularly at the time when Nigeria was in recession. So everyone looked at that $100,000 and they're like, shit, I want to be this guy. And I got many things. One of them was a lot of marriage proposals. But my wife was already on ground, so there wasn't any chance for that. But then there was also this expectation, well, I mean, his first book was good. This one is a novel, his first novel, so this was good too. Is this it, or is there more? Right. So I think there was this expectation, what is he going to bring out next? Is it going to be as good as the next one? Fortunately, I think when I was writing my subsequent books, I've had 2 more books since then. Dreams and Assorted Nightmares, a collection of short stories, and my most recent, When We Were Fireflies, which just came out in March. I was able to turn off that expectation and just focus on my writing, focus on my story. And I've had people say, well, yeah, I think this one is better than the one that won the prize. And then this one that came out, I think this is probably your best work. So, I mean, for me, I think I'm lucky to be able to kind of turn off that pressure and expectation and focus on the work. I'm not sure that is the case for a lot of writers, because you've seen writers who win awards and then subsequently, I think they maybe have the award in their head too much because, people are expecting something better, and then because you have all that pressure on yourself, you are not able to deliver.
And is that pressure that you're putting on yourself, is it sort of abstract, like, I just want this to be better, or is it more like, I should try and write a book like the one that won the prize?
No. Like, I'm very deliberate about not wanting to write the same kind of book. I just write stories that I feel like I want to write at that point in time. And I often try not to think about the previous book that I've written, because that is important, right? What I feel is like, I'm not in competition with any writer. To be honest, I don't feel like writing is a competition. It's different for everybody. People come to writing for different reasons. I came to writing because I wanted to tell stories that I consider beautiful, lovely, right? That show us in our very beautiful sense and in our very ugly, hideous way, right? Because that's how we are. We're humans, right? We're flawed and we're beautiful at the same time. And I wanted to project that. So the pressure that matters to me is the pressure I place on myself, which is I want to be a better person than I was yesterday, and I want to be a better writer than I was during my last work, right? So that is the pressure that counts for me, not any other external pressure.
And Jennifer, you told us a little bit about, how you perceived prizes before you received a prize, but what impact has, receiving a large prize had on your sense of yourself as a writer, on your career, and on where you are today?
So, the way it changed my life. So, I had the Kwani Manuscript Project Prize. That was my first, and for them, they sent me an email in the beginning and said, you've been longlisted. And then I think I celebrated more on the long list than the winning, because I just could not believe it. And then the short list came out and I was on it. And I remember walking down the road in Manchester and I was looking around and thinking, they have no idea I'm on the short list. And this is a very tiny Kwani manuscript project, but it meant so much to me because I had been in Britain for over 12 years writing and being rejected. So this was immense. And when I was told that I had won, I think I started shaking. And then I told my partner that I've won an award. And he looked at me, you really? I decided not to convince him at that point. So when the Commonwealth Prize came along, I had gone through all of that. So I was a little bit zen. I didn't tell my family or about the long list until it came out. And I didn't tell anybody that I had won. And because this time, the Commonwealth was so wonderful. They took me back home to Uganda, and they announced it while there. And I had invited my mother and every member of the family whom I had lied to that I'd gone to Britain to study literature, and I was coming back to become a headmistress. And finally they said, so this is what you're doing. So by the time the Wyndham Campbell Prize came along, I was a little bit more, what can I say, developed in terms of how I relate to it. But I remember that moment. I went to Yale one day and I met Michael and together, and we were talking about you winning the prize. And I remember standing there looking in awe at you, thinking, oh my God, what would I be? What would I do if I won that amount of money? You know? And then, of course, it happened. And again, I just went into shaking, you know. I remember my partner saying, oh, so you've won 16,000 pounds. I said, no. I said, 160,000, was it 170?
165.
165. I got more than you. She's holding it. But I remember him me getting angry with him, you know, lowering my prize to 16,000. So I went to the computer, I Googled the Wyndham Campbell Prize, and I had a large computer, and the prize money was huge. And I turned it around there. And I remember him standing up and leaving the room, because we both didn't know what this meant for us. But afterwards, after that, I started to grow up a little bit and start to look at prizes for what they are. I have seen a lot of books that I've read that I thought this book should have won an award, and they are nowhere near the short list. If any of you is familiar with Marlon James's writing, if you've read his work, most of us agree that the Book of Night Women is his best ever. We never saw it anywhere at all until he won the Booker for another prize. So now, and also because I've judged, and often I lose. I go with my book and I say this one, or my short story, and I lose out to other people. And I keep on thinking, if only this person knew. If only I could write to this person and say to them, your book is fantastic, it could have won, you know? And so I've learned to accept that prizes do not necessarily give you the best book, but it gives you the best book to those judges, you know, or to the books that went through, because it's young people who read at the shortlisting level, and the way they rather long list is interesting, you know. So I just wanted to put it out that for me now, having won quite a few now, I am less convinced that I am the best out there, you know, and having also looked at students' writing, you know, and seeing how the publishing world operates. I would like to say to people listening to us that prizes are fantastic. There's no doubt, and I love winning them, but don't take them too seriously.
Aminata, what was the first prize you won? There's such a long list of them on your Wikipedia page. I couldn't remember which one was the first.
Actually, nor can I. So let me talk about something else. Because actually I'd love to pick up on what Jennifer said. I'm published by Grove in the United States, and my publisher there, over lunch one day, said, you know, when one of my authors wins a great prize, I'm really happy for that author. and it's wonderful for them. But we know it doesn't necessarily mean that the other authors are not equally worthy. And they do not allow any of their commissioning judgments or their choice of books to be dictated by that fact. I mean, so they say, of course, it's always a little bit, prizes are great for your CV, right, for your resume. However, there are other publishers who are completely fixated on the prizes, absolutely fixated, and it's because the prizes do so much marketing work. So, for example, what's now called the Women's Prize, which was the Bailey, which was, when I was shortlisted it for was the Orange Prize. If you're shortlisted for the Orange, which the Memory of Love was, I shifted 30 to 40,000 books just by the shortlisting. There are other prizes you could be shortlisted for. Nothing happens, right? Absolutely nothing happens. So, but those big ones, you mentioned the Booker, those big ones that shift books, some of the publishers are absolutely fixated on them. But I think it's also worth going through a little bit about how people are selected for the prizes. Each publishing house can put forward 2 authors. This is typical, right, for the Booker or the Women's Prize or one of those. They can put forward 2 authors, and so if you're published by, let's say, HarperCollins, who publish a huge number of big names, or even now Bloomsbury, who publish a huge number of big names, if you're a young or new author, your chances of being picked are pretty slim, because you're going to be up against Michael Ondaatje, you're going to be up against Margaret Atwood. And now the other thing you have to know is that the big name authors usually have it written into their contract that they will be selected for the Booker. So, when you say Marlon James didn't get noticed, it could well be that he was never put forward for the prize. And so when I was shortlisted with the Devil That Darts on the Water, I was shortlisted for the biggest prize for non-fiction in Britain, which was then called the Samuel Johnson, became the Baillie Gifford, and it did change my career, right? I'd never published before, and suddenly my memoir, went straight to the top of the heap and in prize terms, and that was great. It meant my next book got commissioned. However, the way in which I managed that was managed was the fact that a judge called it in, and that's the only other way that you can get noticed, is a judge calls it in. And so there was a judge there who was a reviewer who knew a lot about African literature, and she called the book in, and so it was just chance, really. So there's a lot of it is managed and manipulated in ways that you learn when you join the industry, which you don't know before. From the outside, you don't see all of that.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, of course.
The first woman, when it got published, when we were selling it, I had a publisher. For the first time, I had 4 publishers interested in the book. But I had one publisher who was throwing a lot of money at me. And then I had a smaller publisher who was going to give me so little, but my book was the biggest thing happening to them. Okay? When we looked at the publisher giving me a lot of money, I was a nobody. They could afford to give me a lot of money, but it's not just putting you into prizes, it's what kind of editor they're going to give you. It's what kind of packaging they're going to spend on your book. So when we looked at that, they were not doing much, but they were giving me a lot of money. And I thought, if this had happened to a young writer coming out of Africa, they would have gone for the money. Definitely. But then they give you a shoddy editor, the book is not properly, covered. So it's also important that your agent is on top of things. And they would say to you, you know what, don't take the big money. That's it. They are not going to promote your book. Take the smaller money and let them treat your book like it's the best thing that has happened to them.
Yeah, can I just say something about that? There is a prominent African writer who is published by this very big publishing company, and an agent went to his publishers. There's a festival, and went to the big publisher. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm asking about this person's book, and the sales rep for that publisher was like, who is that? And she's like, it's your author. I was like, who? So she mentioned the author's name. The sales rep had to go through her list. I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. So that happens. It's not always the biggest publishers that are the best for you, right? Sometimes, yes, there's this tokenization. We want that African editor on the list to say that we're kind of inclusive. There's diversity on the list, but usually, is it the best for you? So what you said is very important. There are sometimes you have to take consideration of the other factors, not just the big money, right? But there's also something I want to add about your managing experience domestically, or expectations domestically, right? When I was shortlisted for the Nigeria Prize for Literature, long-listed, there was a lot of buzz about it. And my wife was like, why are they talking so much about this prize? Like, how much is it? And I'm like, oh, it's just 100,000. I didn't tell her whether it was Naira or dollars. And she's like, is that why they're making so much noise about it? I could give you that much money. I'm like, yeah, sure. So I'm the one who brings in the newspapers, right? So I mostly kept them away from her, kind of shielded her from all that publicity, because at work, people were talking about the price. People had like budgets. They were making budgets for if this was them, right? What they'll do with the money. I wasn't doing any of that. I wasn't even thinking about it, because I know with prizes, there's never any guarantee. It may be possible that your book is the best on the list, and you may not win it for some reason. So I wasn't thinking about it. I just kept it away from my... Then the shortlist was made, and I shielded her from that. So that conversation wasn't happening at home, right? On the day the prize was going to be announced, she had traveled. And we had agreed, oh, you're going to come back before, that she didn't. So when the prize was announced, and she was on her way back, and then she came, hey, you won, congratulations. So is this like $100,000 or 100,000 Naira? I'm like, no, it's actually a bit more than that. She's like, how much? I'm like, maybe $1 million Naira. She's like, oh, that's huge. I'm like, actually, that's not true. It's like $100,000. And she's like, okay, so how much is that in Naira? I'm like, it's around 34, 40 million. She almost collapsed, right? But she didn't. So there's always that thing about wanting to kind of be in a space where you don't have to like engage with, how much is this, obsessing over money. Yeah. And unfortunately, for me, there were a lot of people obsessing about the money. It's a Nigerian prize. And we grew up in a communal society where people were like, ours has won. So it's not like this person has won. It's we who have won, right? Extended family, relatives, everybody had a stake, right? So you have to like dish out. You have to dish out and all of that. But I think it's good to let other people worry about all of those things and not you having to like obsess over it.
I think we're getting towards the end of our time, so maybe we want to take some questions from the audience. If you want to walk up to the microphone, you can ask a question.
Mic's not on.
I'm going to resist the temptation to tell you about my experience of winning the 2002 Commonwealth Writers' Prize for the best first book. And talk about something else.
Okay.
It seems to me that the Western publishing industry is totally irrational. And this includes the question of award of prizes. There were many things that were wrong with the Soviet Union. But the Soviet Union organized things differently. There was a Soviet Authors Union, and members who had been accepted were guaranteed a living income. If you look at the recent surveys that have been done by the Authors Guild in New York, most American writers
Can I interrupt for 1 second? We've got a huge line gathering up behind you, so could you please ask a question and so we can get to the other people?
Yeah. So my question is this: isn't there a better way to organize the publishing industry?
Do you want to go first? Do you want to go first? Okay, I'll try. Is there a better way of organizing the publishing industry in the West? There used to be a good way, where you had large publishers and then you had the indies, or what they call the independents. Now the independents were small and sometimes subsidized. So they would take on books that are not necessarily going to make money, okay? And this is how we got some of the wonderful books that have stayed with us. You know, they came through the independent small publishers. But most publishers are about making money. You know, it's a business. This is why we have Dan Brown selling 80 million copies, and you have, who is this lady who, 50 Shades of Grey, yeah? Selling so many copies. Publishers know, they know very well that that book was not very well written, but it was going to make them money. And so they put it out, okay? So a lot of you are going to write wonderful books because you are looking for the good books that you couldn't find, so you wrote it. And then go to the gate and be stopped. This is what is happening because most of these independent publishers in Britain, at least where I am, have been swallowed up by these big giant publishers. And these big giant publishers will tell you, a book should do this, it should do this, it should do this, and it should do this. If you don't, they're not going to publish you. I know a huge literary writer who was dropped because his latest novel did not get on a short list of awards.
Can I just add something to that? You know, I think organizing the publishing industry, I don't think anyone has a clue how to do that, not even publishers, right? I remember I was at a residency once, and we had this publisher from a big publishing company come to visit, and we had this conversation, and I asked him one question. I'm like, so how exactly do publishers decide what kind of books they want? Like, what would be the next big issue? And he thought for a while, and he said, to be honest, nobody knows. No one has any idea, right? So it depends what they feel like on that particular day, probably, you know. But my wonderful agent, Sharon, is here, and I think she too can talk about this, about how people are totally clueless sometimes about what really is going to be the next big thing.
Process, and then they send you a note that change this, change that, put that there, put that here, before we put like your poem in our. So for the longest time, I've not seen the need to submit my poems, because the whole idea of it just feels like they are taking a lot of the originality of the writer and totally putting something else. So how would you convince someone who is trying to like get into the idea of submitting poems for collection? Yeah.
Dude, do you want to eat?
Oh, I want to eat.
Yeah.
But then I also think that I've experimented and I realized that if an individual wants to like go about with like their own personal work, they will actually eat. But then just like you said, with the whole idea of bigger publishers or magazines and all of that, it makes it quite hard for like an individual to. But then for me, I really don't want to see my poem somewhere and then it's not how I've envisioned it to be. It's just like a total different point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, you need to find publishers who kind of identify with the work you do and believe in it in the way that it is. Of course, there's going to be the editing process. Some things are going to change, probably. But, I don't think people should really obsess about winning awards. Writing is a very solitary business. It's hard, right? We all know that. And we want people to read the work and appreciate it. But if there's a chance to win an award, take it. It may not be much. I remember there was this writer who had been writing for a very, very, very long time, right? And then he won this award for his poetry. It was just 20,000 naira. It really wasn't much. But he got very emotional and he started crying. And like, dude makes more than this money every week, right? Look, why is he crying about this? And it's like, this is the first ever award he's getting. This is the first time he's making money for his poetry, right? So yeah, it means a lot to different people. And I think if there's a chance, I'm not saying obsess about it, if there's a chance, take it.
Good afternoon. My question has to do with the geographic preference that is placed upon African writers living in the West. It seems as though a lot of literary prizes will recognize African writers the closer they are to the US and the closer they are to the UK. But if you are living and working on the continent, your work often doesn't come close to the radar. And I wanted to ask if you have any comments about this phenomenon.
I would like to say that that does not describe the Wyndham Campbell Prize.
Well, this is why, and yesterday I spoke to it, this is why Africa has to do its own thing. I mean, we simply cannot rely on Western publishers to give us awards, to give us contracts, and to do all of that work. We need homegrown industries, and it was great to be in Kenya, and it's great to be last month for the Makonda Festival. It's great to be here for this. It was great to go to Open Book in Cape Town. Actually, I do see the centre shifting. Right? I really do see the centre shifting. You don't get this kind of audience for events like this in the UK. And I don't think it's something to lament. Let's just do it ourselves. Let's do it ourselves. But if you're asking why they are awarding prizes to writers who live in the West, it's because that's who they know, right? That's who they see. And that's the easiest option. And so those are the people who are at the very forefront. They're the ones who are getting marketed. They're the ones who are getting pushed. And you're relying, therefore, on judges and juries to actually go out and do some work, which is to go out and find those writers in African nations. And I'm afraid that your expectations are probably a wee bit high.
Yeah. Can I add to that? If your book is published in Malawi, your publisher cannot submit your book to the BOCA, period. And also, the publishers pay money to submit to awards. Chances are that your publisher in Africa doesn't have that amount of money. So some of us went to Europe specifically because we knew that. We wanted to get very close to that market and very close to those editors and to those agents because we knew in Africa we wouldn't be reaching to it.
Hello, I think I want to talk about the effect of winning prizes that has to do with authors who haven't won prizes in Africa. I'm an author, I have published works, and I have my books selling across Nigeria and Ghana, a lot of bookshops. But now there's something you notice when you go to their pages. Your book is not publicized as much as the books of those who have won prizes. Now, if you want them to, keep posting about your books and all that, you have to pay for the publicity. But sometimes when you just go, every now and then they're posting about the person who has won awards, who has won prizes is the one, the book is this person, award winning, it's more precious than every other author who hasn't won these prizes. And the second thing also, in Africa, I have come to realize that we idolize African authors who live outside Africa. So the books mean more to booksellers, publishers, bookstores. It means I mean, how is this, how do we come to terms with the fact that not every African author is going to win these prizes, but the books are amazing. So how do we deal with those who haven't won the prizes? How do they get to that stage where they can get called? Truth be told, I mean, a lot of people here are amazing writers, but they are not seated there because they haven't won prizes. So how is this going to be dealt with? How do you bring out the authors who haven't won prizes, and how do we get them read and positioned? Thank you.
Can I go a little bit on that? About books published in Africa. Wait for her to sit down. So about books no, it's okay. My first novel, Chintu, was published in Kenya. Yeah? There was no publicity whatsoever. Okay? The first year it sold 400 copies in Kenya and sold 400 copies in Uganda. And then the readers, those 800 people who had read it, went on talking about it. There was no, and I'm telling you, there was no publicity about that book. That book was sold by Africans with word of mouth, okay? So don't put writers down, don't put the readers down, those on the continent. They can, if your book is good, they will do your work for you. So the bloggers, the vloggers, they all, in fact, that book only made it to the US because of a few people, Murua here, you know, but there was no publicity about it. All I can tell you is write a damn good book. Africa will reward you. That's my experience.
Yeah. I think to add to that, I think we need to be conscious of the fact that publishing on the continent is small, and it's mostly driven by people who basically have the passion to publish books, right? So they put in their own personal money because they care about this thing. And the reward is often very little because the book chain is very loose, right? So you have instances where publishers send out books, people sell the books, they never pay the money back. Right? So it's a challenging thing for them. But the most important thing I want to mention is the fact that a lot of these publishers don't have a budget for book promotion. They never do, because there's never enough money in the first place. So maybe it will help if you are signing a contract, ask what do you have in your budget for publicity. That is important. But like Jennifer said, the most important thing is people read the book, they like it, they talk about it. And word of mouth on this continent, right, is the best way for book promotion.
I think one thing I would like just to add to that too is, you know, when we were thinking back to our children's session earlier today, is we need to develop more readers as well. I mean, books are competing with video games, they're competing with streaming services, they're competing with phones and so forth. And so, you know, we are facing a certain shrinking of the reading population. And I think the importance of, you know, more prizes, more publishers, you know, more forums for developing a readership is really the future that needs to be developed, whether it's, you know, on the African continent or in the USA or UK as well. So with that, I just want to thank Abubakar, Jennifer, and Aminata. Give them a big hand. I also want to thank Chike Frankie Adozian for organizing this. The Wyndham Campbell Prizes are co-sponsor of the festival. We're really proud to be here and be a part of it. So thanks everybody for coming.
Shall we Hello. Shall we acknowledge and appreciate the panelists one more time? Before our next couple of sessions, we will take an hour or an hour and 30 minutes break. Please stick and stay. We have a lot more coming up. See you soon. There's a book signing. Please visit the canopies. There are books for sale. There are book bags for sale.
walking cruise. Diamonds on the soles of her shoes. She was physically forgotten and then she slipped into my pocket with my car keys. She says she takes me for granted because I'm bleeding blue. Diamonds on the soles of her shoes. And then she said, ooh. As if everybody knows exactly what I was talking about. As if everybody knows exactly what I was talking about. I'm talking about diamonds on the soles of her shoes. Yeah.